Good day. I hope you've had a fantastic week. I'm going to kick off this week's show with the Rand against the American dollar, and we can see that the Rand is still caught within the descending channel. Technically, it tested that 40-week moving average this week and retraced from it. That 40-week moving average is the line in the sand, and as long as the Rand remains below 1398, we can see more strength in the Rand. Strong support levels is waiting around 1359 and even around 1329. When the Rand starts to consolidate again above that 40-week moving average, we can see more weakness in the Rand. Levels are 1407, 1410, and this upper band of the descending channel might be waiting at 1423. One of our first questions was from Derek, and he wanted us to look at Multichoice. Now, Multichoice unbundled from Naspers on Wednesday, and I thought it might be a good idea to also explain just to new viewers what a candle represents. So the candle represents this upper shadow. The tip of that upper shadow represents the highest trading price of the session. And the lowest point of that shadow or wick represents the lowest price of the trading session. The real body, or the part that is colored in, this is known as the real body. And when the price closed higher than where it opened, the color is green. That means this lower part of the real body is the opening price, and this top part of the real body is the closing price. Let's say this was a red candle. It means it closed at a lower price than where it opened. So that means that upper part would have been the opening price, and this lower part would have been the closing price. Now we know for every buyer, there must be a seller before I have a trade. So this was the lowest trading price, the bottom of the wick, the highest trading price, the top of the wick, and the real body is the opening and closing prices. And whether it's a red or a green candle, it tells me whether it was a higher closing price or a lower closing price. But interesting enough, if I look at this multi-choice candle, with this long upper shadow, it tells me that the sellers were stronger in this trading session. Why? Because the high of the session was 115 Rand 60, but the share closed at 106 Rand and 1 cent. That means the sellers were stronger because they managed to push the price lower. So imagine now the next candle and the next candle and the next candle. And before you know it, you can identify patterns and see what the price action of the share represents. So Derek, I hope this candle tells you that the fierce pressure of the sellers were visible on Wednesday when Multichoice listed. Roger wanted us to look at First Rand. And there's a beautiful bullish pennant on First Rand. Now, a bullish pennant is a continuation pattern. That means the overall trend of the share is up. But when the share starts to move into this pause symmetrical triangle, it needs to decide whether the buyers are strong enough to take the share to even higher levels. And this bullish pennant, the optimism of this formation will only be confirmed when this upper band of that resistance changes into a support. And that is waiting around 69 Rand 42. And if that level changes into a support, we can assume that the momentum to the top, that the overall trend line and the overall momentum would continue for First Rand to higher levels. However, when this lower band of the symmetrical triangle changes into a resistance, we can maybe see even more downside. Now, the other concern about the First Rand graph at the moment is the fact that the share has been struggling for 2 weeks now to change this 40-week moving average into a support. Now it's trading at the moment below it, and that 40-week moving average is waiting at 65 Rand 66. Why are we looking at a 40-week moving average, and why is it so important on a weekly graph for medium to long-term investors? The 40-week moving average, it's the average closing price of the share on a Friday over the last 40 weeks. So that gives you the overall trend of the share, and the barometer for medium to long-term investors is if the share starts to consolidate below that 40-week moving average, it's the first sign that there might be a loss of momentum, and that the sellers are saying maybe looking other grounds to find other shares on other grounds, and that they might be selling the share. This lower highs on the graph is also a bit of a concern because it tells me that the buyers are not strong enough to lift the share price to higher levels. However, having said that, this bullish pennant is the key to the first run, and it needs to consolidate above this upper band for the optimism to continue. Edward wanted us to look at Capitec. Now, Capitec is just, it looks like it's on steroids. It's just reaching from the one high to the other. And if you look at this share where it started here in Feb 2014, it's just reached for higher levels. But something interesting on the upper shadows of the candles on the weekly graphs, there is longer upper shadows appearing, and that tells me that there are investors that are starting to take profit despite the strength. But the momentum is clearly up. There's no sign of weakness yet. Please don't buy the share if you haven't bought it yet. It is extremely overbought on the stochastic indicator. Now, the stochastic indicator works like an elastic band. When it's above an 80 or a 90, it means it's stretched to a side, which makes the probability of the share to take a breather to the downside more likely. When the indicator is oversold, in other words, it's trading below a 20 or a 10, it means it's slack and there's a lot of room for this band to stretch to higher levels. So the ideal place to enter a position to buy a share is when this stochastic indicator is below a 20 and especially below a 10, because then there's still a lot of room for this elastic band to move to higher levels. So yes, there's many indicators that traders use to identify overbought or oversold levels. The stochastic is just one of the indicators that you can use. Naspers, one of our favorites and one of the darlings, and some of them would say one of their biggest enemies on the JSE. Now, the Naspers has got two interesting formations here. It's caught within a descending channel and has been since about October 2017. And this is a weekly graph of Naspers, which means this descending channel is an optimistic formation, which means if the share starts to trade above this upper band of the descending channel, it can easily reach for higher levels. However, it's also caught within this rising channel, which means if the share starts to change this lower band into a resistance, it can reach for lower levels. Now, what do I do? Because I've got an optimistic formation and I've got a negative formation here. So it depends on what the share does. So despite the indicators, our price action and the movement of the share price is always the indicator that weighs the heaviest. That's why formations and support and resistance levels are so important, because it tells you where the buyers and the sellers were the strongest. And if technically the fact that Naspers is trading below this 40-week moving average is a concern. I've mentioned previously that that's the line in the sand and that's the barometer that medium to long-term investors use to say, is the share losing momentum or is it just reaching for higher levels? So technically, when Naspers starts to trade below this 2,959 level, this lower band would be confirmed. And remember, this is the weekly graph, so that will be on a Friday close. And we know, some of you who are regular viewers to the show, is how do we determine that the target of a channel, descending or a rising channel, is we take the width of the channel and we project it downwards. From the break or the confirmation of the channel. So if I take this channel and I project it downwards, this channel can take the share to 2,676 Rand 99. Technically, if I take this descending channel, the optimistic descending channel, and the share starts to trade above this break and confirmation of the descending channel, this share can go to a brand new high. But we know the only thing that takes a share price to higher levels is more buyers. So if Naspers can't find more buyers, then unfortunately, this rising channel would take this share to lower prices. Amazon. Peter wanted us to look at Amazon. Now, we've spoken about Amazon last week already and mentioned that there is a head and shoulder formation. And we can see last week that this bullish, or rather a Harami candle, was a little bit optimistic. But this week, this doji candle tells me that yes, there's a little bit of buying power, but they're a little bit hesitant. Now, I just want to maybe highlight to our viewers the head and shoulder formation that we've identified. So we've got the left shoulder, the head, found strong support, it bounced a little bit again, found resistance, and it might be building on a right shoulder. Now, the head and shoulder formation will only be confirmed when this neckline, look here, this trend line is the neckline, changes into a resistance. So the head and shoulder formation is a warning formation. It tells me that the share is losing momentum. We can see it's trading below its 40-week moving average, which is a concern. And the next confirmation of weakness would be when the share starts to trade below this $1,587. But the negativity or the warning of this head and shoulder formation would be confirmed when this neckline of the pattern changes into a resistance. We know around here in August, September, they reached a $1 trillion market cap. But the warning formation cannot be ignored, and especially the fact that it's below this 40-week moving average. And Peter, if you want to trade Amazon, indicators, it's in no man's land. Remember that I want that elastic band to be toppish before I short a share. So, but if you want to go with the formation, I would consider a short below this support line. Maybe use $1,675 as a stop loss. And you can trade it to the neckline if you are keen to short Amazon. Jonathan wanted us to look at Facebook. Now, if you're any social media fanatic, maybe listed somewhere, you'll know what Facebook is. And unfortunately, Facebook is starting to trade below its 40-week moving average, and that is a concern. Now, this candle this week, and I know we're sitting on a Thursday, so this is still a spinning candle, which tells me there's indecision. Investors are not sure whether they need to take this share price to higher levels or lower levels. But the fact that Facebook is trading below that 40 moving average is a concern. And technically, it needs to change $164 into a support for the momentum of the share to continue to higher levels. Look at this tweezer top. Now, a tweezer top is two upper shadows on candles that tells me that for 2 consecutive sessions, the selling pressure were fierce. And that was my first warning that, hey, this share might be losing momentum. And then obviously it started to trade below the 40-week moving average, which is a bit of a concern.